Hi, this is Kevin Gong. In this video, I'm going to show how to checkmate with two bishops and a king versus a lone king. Now, I should start off by saying that this isn't a very common situation. In fact, I've never actually had to do it in a game. But I think it's good to learn how to use the three different pieces together. And it's also kind of fun. It's not too difficult, as you'll see in this video. Um, So one thing you'll notice if you try it is that unlike having two rooks, where you don't need the king, you can't checkmate with just the two bishops without using your king. You really need to use all three pieces together. So let's start by looking at a situation where you've already got the opposing king cornered. And so this is pretty simple. It's checkmate in two moves. So the only two squares that the black king can go to right now are a7 and a8. The a6 square is guarded by this bishop, and the b file squares are guarded by the king. So all you have to do is move your bishop over to c5, check, and then checkmate. Okay, so that was pretty easy. So let's look at a slightly more complicated example. So you've got the king in the corner again, but you can't checkmate in two moves here. If you move your bishop at b4 to c5, you got to be careful there, because if you do that, that's stalemate, because the king will not be in check and it won't have anywhere to go. So, and if you move your bishop at b5 to c6, check, he'll just move here and you won't be able to checkmate on the next move. You aren't making any real progress. So this is very similar to the previous position before, except that the king was here and it was our move. So you basically just want to do a tempo move, kind of a nothing move to force that situation to happen, and then you can do your checkmate in two moves. So there's lots of different things you can do, and in this case we can just move this bishop, for example, along this diagonal, and then the king has to move there, and now we're back into the position we had that we looked at earlier, where it's checkmate in two moves. So bishop there, check, and then checkmate. Okay, so it's important you keep that idea of the tempo move in mind near the end of the checkmate. So let's go back a little and look at the case where the opposing king is on the edge, so it's trapped on the A file in this position, but it's not yet in the corner. So in this position, we'd like to get it probably over to the A8 square and move our king up to C7. So in the final position, you'll either want to get, if the opposing king is on A7 and A8, then you'll want to get your king to C7. And if the opposing king is on A8 and B8, you'll want to get it to your king to B6. So you basically want it directly opposite the opposing king and one square away from the edge. So basically when you want to do this, you basically just look at squares that the opposing king can go to. And in this case, it can go to A4 and, well, that's it. So you don't want to let it go to A4 because that's in the opposite direction of your king. So just move your bishop here to B3 and that'll force it back up to A6. Okay, then again, look where it can go. It can go to A5, so we'll just use our bishop to prevent it from going there. Okay, and we're making good progress. It's up to A7, and now we don't want it to leak out to B8. So now we can move our king into position. Okay, you basically, let's go back here. You don't want to move your king here too soon. So let's say in this position, you wouldn't want to move it here, obviously, because then You want to move your king to c7 because then the opposing king can move to b5. In general, you want to wait until the opposing king is on a7 before you move your king to c7 so that you can be directly across from it. Okay, so now let's say it moves to a6. Now note that this bishop is guarding the a5 square already, so we just bring the other bishop over, check, and force it back up. And then it's checkmate in two moves again. We've seen this position before. Check, checkmate. Okay, so let's look at one more corner position before we look at the more general case. So here we've basically got the opposing king trapped. I can only go to a7 and a8. But our king is not on c7 where we'd like it, and in fact our bishop's in the way. We can't get there right now. Um, so you might think, well, I got him trapped. I'll just move this bishop over to b6, check. But then the opposing king can go to b8. So we don't want that to happen. So we'll leave this bishop on this diagonal, but we want to make room for our king. So, and the other thing I should point out is you don't want to make the mistake of moving your bishop, your light squared bishop to b7, since that would be stalemate. So that would be bad. Don't do that. So we're just going to move this back and make room for our king. Okay, and then opposing king goes to a8, and we move our king into position. Okay, and then again, now we've got checkmate in two moves again. So check, it's forced to the corner, and checkmate. Okay. All right. So let's look at kind of a more general looking position. Um, so when the two bishops are next to each other, they define kind of a V shape. So like this, the dark squared bishop has attacks these squares here, this V, and the light squared bishop attacks these squares here. And the opposing king can't go through uh, these lines here that are next to each other. If you keep the two bishops next to each other, they can't go through. So the other thing you need to remember is that you need all three pieces to work together. So in this case, your king is far away from the opposing king, so you probably want to start moving it over. Okay. So you might think, well, I can move my bishop here. The impulse of a lot of beginner players is to just check. If they see a check, they'll just check. But sometimes that's not the best move. If you check with this bishop to f3, then the king can go over to c4. So you want to kind of keep the king contained in this V shape, force it toward this edge, the eighth rank. So we don't want to check. We want to leave this bishop on this diagonal. That's fine. So we'll just move our king and force it up. Now we can move the bishop to f3 because it can't. The opposing king can't leak out. Okay. And again, we can move the other bishop. But usually we'll just try to alternate moving bishops one line at a time and move our king when we can. All right, and again, if we move this off of this diagonal, it could leak out to c6, so we won't do that. We'll just move our king in. Okay, all right. So now we finally have the opposing king trapped on the edge. So how do we keep him there? So what we should do is look where the opposing king can go to. So it can't go to c7 because of this bishop here, but it can go to c8 and d7. So we should try to keep it from going there, so we'll just move our bishop over to g4, and it's forced to move along. Okay. Now it can go to d8, so we'll just move this bishop to c7 to keep it moving along toward h8. Alright, and now we don't want it to move to e8, so move our bishop to d7. Alright, so now we can finally move our king into position at g6. Okay, and now we just alternate our bishops. So check, check, checkmate. Okay, so let's look at another somewhat general looking position. Give you a better feel for how to do this. So this is a little different because your king is on the opposite side of your bishops. So you're going to have to move your king all the way to the other side, basically. And your bishops are not next to each other, but they do define a line here, and a line here. So, well, first thing we need to do is get our king into the action. It's too far away, so we'll just move it in and see where it goes. So, let's see. We'll just keep moving it. And let's see. Can we do anything here? No, I think we just keep moving our king. Alright. So now once you've got the kings opposite like this, then you can, at this point you'll probably want to move one of your bishops. So we can just bring our bishops out, check. Alright, and so now we probably want to define our two diagonal lines and force the opposing king toward this area here. So we put the bishop on g6, we've got our two lines, and note that it can't leak out to d5 because our king on c5. Okay, that's you can see how you need to get your king closer to prevent the opposing king from leaking out through our barricade. All right, so yeah, so we would like to move our bishop to d2, except we take it. But if we could do that, then we'd force him down another diagonal line. But we can't do that, so we'll just move our king over. Okay, and then he moves there. Now we can do it. Now we can move our bishop to d2. And again, he can't move to e5 because of our king. So he moves there. And then we can't. The opposing king can't move to e4 because of the king. So we can move our bishop off of that diagonal and move it to h5. Again, we keep the two diagonal lines next to each other. Okay. And once the king, you see that king get that far away from your king, then you can move your king closer. Alright, and again, we've seen this pattern before. You've got our two diagonal lines, and this king is guarding the f4 square, so we can bring this bishop over, force him down some more, and now let's see. So we would like to move our bishop over here, right? But we can't. But if we could do that, then he'd be forced down to these three squares. But since we can't do that, well, we don't want the opposing king to move to f1, attacking our bishop. So we'll just bring our bishop down to e2. Okay. And now we can trap him on the h file. Okay, we'll just bring our king over. Okay, so you might think, well, the f2 square is now available for my king. But if you do that, then black will move his king to h3, and then there's no good way for you to prevent him from moving to h4 on the next move. You'd basically have to move your king out of the way of your bishop. So you'd end up just moving your king back and forth without really making any progress. So I think here it's actually better to move your bishop to f2 to prevent him from moving to g1. Okay. And now we still need to get our king to f2. So let's see. So here, first thing we can do is move our bishop to f1 to confine the black king to h1 and h2. Okay. And then, actually, I should back up a sec. So we basically saw this before, where we want to get our king to um, f2, and our bishop's in the way. So we basically just move it out of the way. It doesn't particularly matter where, just along this diagonal. So we want to keep it on the diagonal because um, we don't want the black king moving to g1. Okay, and then now we can move our king to f2. Okay, and then it's checkmate in 2 moves. Check, checkmate. Okay, so I hope this helps you learn how to checkmate with 2 bishops. Thanks for watching.